Chapter 5. On his way to Min's house early one morning, as the plum trees took on their gold and scarlet autumn garb, Trier spied the potter Keng wheeling a cart toward the kiln site. The cart was covered over with a cloth. That in itself was of interest to Trier. An ordinary commission for a set of household bowls, say, would not merit such caution. Keng had to be firing something special that day. Moreover, the fact that Keng was on the road so early meant that he wished to reach the kiln before anyone else. He would crawl into the oven tunnel and push his work to the farthest end, yet another precaution against curious eyes. Trier stood still for a moment, arms crossed and brow furrowed. It seemed that it would be a good idea to visit the kiln when this particular load had finished firing. But when he reached the kiln site several days later, Keng's work was nowhere to be found. Over the next few days, as Trier trotted about the village to and from work or on errands for Min, he kept his eyes wide in search of Keng. His vigilance was rewarded on the fourth day. Trier crouched beside Keng's rubbish heap, a spot he knew well, and watched as Keng emerged from his potting shed early that evening, carrying 2 small bowls. Keng held them carefully as if they were quite full. Concentrating on the bowls, he stumbled on a stone in his path. The contents of both bowls sloshed over a little, and Keng cursed loudly enough for Trier to hear. Then he disappeared into the house. Trier waited a moment longer before creeping to the spot in the yard where Keng had stumbled. In the fading light, he examined the spillage closely. Clay, mixed with enough water to be semi-liquid. The potters called it slip. Nothing unusual about that. But one thing puzzled Trier. 2 bowls, 2 different colors of slip, brick red and white. Trier slipped away from the yard, thinking hard. There were places along the riverbank digging area where the clay was of various colors, to be sure. But what the potters sought was the grey-brown clay that fused so well with the celadon glaze. Both the body of a vessel and its glaze changed color when fired. A vessel that went into the kiln a dull, mousy color emerged a remarkable translucent green. So the diggers avoided the areas where the clay was striped dirty white or rusty red, as clay of these colors did not make the transformation to celadon green when fired. Yet Keng was working with red and white slip. What could he be doing? Trier knew that potters sometimes attempted to paint designs on their work using colored slip, but the attempts were far from successful. When glazed and fired, the slip blurred or ran, making the edges of the design indistinct rather than crisp and clear. Every once in a while, an inexperienced potter would try his hand at painting his pieces, but the more accomplished potters, Min and Keng among them, had long ago given up trying the technique. Trier did not believe that Keng was painting his pieces, but what else could one do with small amounts of colored slip? As he walked home that evening, no answer surfaced among the questions that darted about like fish in his mind. The endless cycle of work for Min continued. Chopping wood, cutting clay, draining clay. Sometimes there would be a small diversion, like the time Min sent him to the beach for seashells. They were used as stilts in the kiln to support a vessel clear of the clay stand on which it was fired, so that the 2 would not fuse together. The shells had to be of a precise shape and size. Trier returned with a basket full of shells, of which Min rejected the majority, then sent him back for more. Trier no longer woke each morning with the thought that perhaps this would be the day that Min would allow him to sit at the wheel. Now he thought in moons or even seasons. Perhaps this month, perhaps this winter, or next spring. The flame of hope that burned in him was smaller now, but no less bright or fierce, and he tended it almost daily with visions of the pot he would make. It would be a prunus vase, the most elegant of all the shapes, tall and beautifully proportioned, rising from its base to flare gracefully and then round to the mouth. A prunus vase was designed for one purpose, to display a single branch of flowering plum. Trier loved the symmetry of the prunus vases that grew on Min's wheel. Once, back in the spring, during his early days with Min, he had watched the potter place a plum branch in a finished vase to judge the effect. The gentle curves of the vase, its mysterious green color, the sharp angles of the plum twigs, their blackness stark amid the airy white blossoms. The work of a human, the work of nature. Clay from the earth, a branch from the sky. A kind of peace spread through Tree Ear, body and mind, as if while he looked at the vase and its branch, nothing could ever go wrong in the world. The days shortened and grew cooler. The rice was harvested and the poor were allowed to glean the fields for fallen grain heads. It was an arduous, back-breaking task, hours at work to gather mere handfuls of rice. Tree Ear rose before first light now, spending an hour or so in the fields before going to work. At the end of the day he returned to the fields again, collecting rice even after darkness had rendered his eyes useless. The rice gathered now would see the poor through the winter months when no wild food grew. There were times at the end of the day, especially, when Tree Ear thought he could not gather a single head more. I don't really have need of it now, he would think. But alongside that thought another would rise. Who knows how long Min will want me to work? And he would redouble his efforts. Crane Man was busy too. When he grew weary of gathering rice, he would sit at the edge of the field, plaiting handfuls of rice straw to make mats and sandals. This was a skill he had taught himself long ago, being unable to perform more vigorous work because of his bad leg. Crane Man made Tree Ear's sandals first, saying that the boy had more need of them because of his work. He measured Tree Ear's feet carefully and plaited several layers of straw for the thick, sturdy soles. More straw was cleverly twisted and woven to form the sides. "Finished!" Crane Man exclaimed one evening, tucking in the final straw as the last of the winter light faded. He handed the pair of sandals to Tree Ear, who bowed his thanks and bent to put them on immediately. Crane Man's face fell. Though Tree Ear jammed his foot forward and stretched the heel, the sandal was too small. Crane Man muttered grumpily to himself and fished around in his waist pouch for the grubby string he had used to measure Tree Ear's feet. He held it up against the sole of the sandal. It was a perfect match. He snorted. "Oh," he said, "so I did not err in the making. You, my young friend, have been so thoughtless as to grow in the last month." It was true. Tree Ear noticed himself that very day when he had bumped his head on a section of the bridge under which he had been able to stand erect before. Despite the joke, Tree Ear shook his head ruefully over Crane Man's wasted work. And the sandals brought to mind another worry. Every year at around this time, the monks came down from their mountainside temple to collect their tithe of rice. Sometimes they accepted other donations, such as warm clothing, and Tree Ear stayed alert on the chance that a monk would pass on such garments to the poor. In this way, Tree Ear had often garnered a winter wardrobe for himself and Crane Man. This year, the monks had not appeared. Perhaps there was sickness in the temple, or some other untoward event that prevented their coming, but whatever the reason, Tree Ear was growing concerned for his friend. Crane Man always suffered from the cold, and already the nights were frosty. Soon, winter rode on the back of the wind as it swept down the mountain slopes toward the village. Snow fell only rarely in Chulpo, but Tree Ear could see his every breath now, and the sharp air was full of invisible imps that bit his nose and hands and feet. It was time for Tree Ear and Crane Man to make their annual move. During the winter, the friends sheltered in a dugout on the edge of the village. The farm that once stood there had burned long ago, but the vegetable pit remained. Farmers stored vegetables for their own household use in pits the size of a room. This pit, like the others, had a sloping ramp that allowed entry. Crane Man could stand erect in the pit with his head still below ground level. The two friends roofed the pit with tree boughs and straw. Crane Man's mats lined the floor. Tree Ear hated the cold